Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, visit tableandwell.org. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Are you a parent longing to reconnect with your adult children? Or maybe an adult child hoping to rebuild connection with your parents? Have you felt the gap between you growing and you're not sure how to bridge it? Or perhaps you just want to deepen the safety and connection that already exist in your family? What if I told you learning 12 key relational skills could do all this and more? Relational Collabs is Table and Well's 12-week online signature training where you will gain practical tools proven to heal, transform, and deepen your connection with God, yourself, and those you love the most. It's never too late to rewrite your relational story, to rebuild trust, to create authentic connection, and to experience real joy in your relationships. Our winter semester starts Monday, January 13th at 8 p.m. and registration is open now. Take your first step towards deeper, healthier, and more meaningful relationships your heart has longed for. Visit tableandwell.org/collabs to join today. Table and Well, transforming relational stories, one parent, one child, one family at a time.
There's so many things happening in my brain right now, but I just think about the basics around even just what our brains and bodies need. Like we talk about joy, like joy being this like Hallmark movie in a way I think can come to mind, or everything just being rosy and cheery and we're just happy all the time. And it's not about that as much as it is about that withness.
Yep.
And the release of the oxytocin and the serotonin and the dopamine that we need in order to be healthy and to be able to have what our bodies need. And when we're missing that, it's wild. Like you're talking about that couple, how so much the lack of that begins to write a different story within our minds. And then it becomes the truth that we're living in when it's actually not the truth at all. We're just missing some key components. It's kind of like when we're unhealthy, it's like something's lacking in our body, nutrition's lacking in our body, and now we have a new truth. But it's like this can be reversed. There is ways to bring health back and life back to who we are. And joy is that missing component.
Yeah, it's very true. I remember, so one of the things that happened for me personally when I started studying, Jim Wilder's stuff on joy and maturity, and this was like 30 years ago, right, when I first came across this. And even the manual prayer and the idea of listening prayer as something that God wanted us to engage in, the first impact it had on me was negative because I was so performance oriented. It just became more to do.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It was all right, so I got to find a way to be happier than I am. I've got to find a way to feel something with God I don't currently feel. I've got to find a way to experience intimacy with God when I don't experience intimacy with anybody. So, okay, or I'm a complete failure as a Christian. So that's sort of how it hit me was, all right, just great. 3 more things to fail at. Thank you. So that initially, I just want to acknowledge that because I've run into quite a few people for whom this teaching it. There's some people who get this and it's like, oh, finally, it all makes sense and I can move forward. Then you get this other group of people that are just overwhelmed by it. Like, I already feel like a failure as a Christian, and now you just gave me 3 more things I can fail at. And
appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I talk about that when we teach. One of the things that one of the gifts we give is an opportunity to do interactive appreciation. And I tell a little bit of my story because all of these skills were introduced to us through a counselor. And I was in a deep, dark place. And she's like, so I want you to start practicing appreciation. I'm like, So I sat down, I think the next morning, and she wanted me to journal and listen to God's response, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And I sat there for a good 10 minutes going through the list of all the negatives. Like I could not bring up a
Right.
positive to save my life.
Oh yeah.
And so I was sitting in my office and I looked out the window and there was a tree out there and I was like, um, I like trees. I like trees. And so I wrote in my journal, trees. And I closed the book. And that's how it started for me too, is that like this isn't it can sound so easy and it can sound so like, oh yeah, just do this, just choose joy. Our favorite phrase is just choose joy. Like
Yeah.
if it was just that simple. Um, so I really appreciate what you said because there is a place to start that looks really simple and light, and it's not meant to be one more thing to
Yeah.
do. It really is an invitation.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that helped me is like, because I was, again, I think part of this was in that transition into the elder stage is when I battled the most fear I've ever battled in my life. And there were a lot of factors going into it, but I was having panic attacks at a fairly, and those are scary, not only because of what you're going through, because you don't know what caused it and you don't know what made it stop. And so you're sitting here, and so your mind's constantly like, why am I feeling this? Why is this happening in my body? And so your mind is constantly rehearsing all of the possible reasons to be afraid that you have in your life. And and then somebody tells you, well, practice appreciation. And I'm like, okay, this just may be the stupidest thing I've ever tried to do, because I'm literally trying not to have a panic attack, and I'm trying to really appreciate my morning coffee. And I'm like, it's kind of like you put them on the scales of life, and like one scale's doing this, and you're going to say, I'm going to put trees on this side,
Exactly.
and
And that's supposed to work.
Right.
yeah, somehow that's supposed to fix me, and I think that's part of the pressure that people feel is like they feel this pressure, like if I do this appreciation right, I won't feel this way anymore, and it will fix everything that I'm going through. And so I had to learn to tell myself this is more about stopping to smell the roses than it is about changing the journey that I'm on. I am on this journey right now. It is going down this road, but I've got to learn to stop and smell the roses along the way, or this thing's going to kill me. And nobody and interesting. There's I don't know if you ever saw the very violent movie Last Samurai, but there's a scene there where the head of the samurai community is going into a battle where he knows they're probably all going to get wiped out. But he's taken the time to go through the cherry blossoms, and just enjoy the cherry blossoms. And he knows it's not going to change the outcome of the battle. He knows it isn't going to make his life okay. But to me, that was like there's this capacity to enjoy what there is to enjoy, despite all the other things going on that we need to grow in our lives.
That's good.
And I tell people all the time, the Bible says give thanks in everything, not give thanks for everything. And there's a significant difference. So yeah, I just think it's worth pointing out, especially for people who are in a dark place or in a overwhelmed place already, that we're not talking about quick fixes. We're kind of in some ways talking about permission.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That's really good.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah, a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I ended up experiencing through growing in that was almost like a backfilling of the pothole in the major pothole in my life through appreciation. And sometimes it was like the littlest trickle of dirt, but I noticed over time that pothole got less and less deep, and I wouldn't fall completely in when I came upon it. And so it is an overtime piece. It's not like you get a dump truck and it just fills it all in and you move on all merry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked quite a bit about church and ministry, but Rare Leadership is really about business and about what it looks like to be a leader in maybe more of a professional space. What might you say there in regards to elders in that space and leading well and mentoring well in a more professional setting?
Well, I do just enough like corporate training things to be in that world enough to get a feel for what's going on. And I would say that essentially when I teach rare leadership in the corporate setting, well, I find a couple of things interesting. Number one, far and away, the most common feedback I get is I now understand my marriage and my family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People are like, okay, this whole thing about a joy switch in the brain and curiosity and appreciation and a joy gap and all this other stuff. Okay. Everything is starting to make sense now. Infant level, child level maturity. All right. This is ticking some boxes, and their mind leaves work pretty quickly and goes to their families.
Yeah.
And that's pretty clearly the number one reaction I've gotten in the corporate setting. And then but the role, to answer your question specifically on elders in that community, you have the same pros and cons. And that is that a lot of the elders in the corporate world got where they are by being predators.
Mm.
And then you got those people who are elders in the corporate world who got their way by being wonderful people and wonderful leaders. Yeah. And so I look at a book like Good to Great by Jim Collins that talks about, level 5 leaders and hedgehog leaders, all this stuff. And you look at it, it's the difference between the narcissistic leader who is just in it for themselves and doesn't know how to function if they're not the hero,
mm-hmm.
versus the servant leader, really, who is willing to be in the background, doesn't have to be in the limelight, and just wants what's best for the company and for everybody else. There's it's like the difference between coaches in athletics who are all about winning and coaches who are all about culture. Yeah. And so what you find is that the coaches that build culture end up winning over time. The people who are all about winning don't usually stick around that long. They may win in the short term, but they tend not to win for a long period over time.
Yeah.
And so in the corporate realm, what you find is that the elders who are in the room are going to accentuate one or the other. You're either going to create a predatory bully culture, or you're going to create a servant leader. People love to be a part of this culture. People love, working here kind of thing. And this one over here over time will produce far more results. This one over here can produce results in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tell people there is a time to lead with like upsetness, like it's called a crisis. Like, if my kid is stepping out in front of a bus, I don't go, well, how do you feel about that? Right.
Right.
If they're about to step in front of a bus, I'm like, curious. No, stop. Right now, come here right now. Right. There's a time to do that. And so what happens is if we lead that way routinely, then we're turning everything into a crisis. And if you turn everything into a crisis, you're just going to burn everybody out.
Right.
And, so it plays a huge role, and even the secular leadership books acknowledge this and say the same things, and that is the most successful leaders are the ones who build the cultures that people love to be a part of, and part of the reason they love to be a part of it is they like what they're producing, they like the results that they're getting, and so it's not a culture devoid of results. It's a culture that gets results because people have gone through battles together. They've got each other's back. They know they can count on each other, and they're able to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And they also matter. They're not being treated as cogs in a wheel or in a machine. There's a value for them as a person as well, I think really comes into play there too.
Yeah, it's tough. I talked to a guy who was in the corporate setting for years. He had over 1,000 people reporting to him at one point.
Wow.
And he had a company that was tens of times bigger than that. And he was often given the job of firing people because, the higher up bosses didn't want to do it. So they'd have him do it. And he's told me he developed the habit of sitting down and telling and just being blunt with people. He said, look, you got 3 things that are not up to par, and I'm going to give you 3 months to turn this around. You got to fix this, this, and this. And he said, unbelievable how many of them had never been told.
Wow.
Because people are so afraid of confrontation right? They're so afraid of confrontation. It's like, okay, this is either going to be easy or I'm going to fire you. And they don't know anything in between.
Right.
Like, how do you develop people? How do you let them know where they really are weak and what they need to do to get stronger in this area? Again, in athletics, we're aware that it's like, you really got to go on a weight training program this off season because I need you to bulk up by 15 pounds, and I need that to be primarily muscle. So this is the plan we're going to put in place for you. Or you can say, you're just not strong enough, you're out of here. Right. And so it's kind of that sort of mindset. Now, that doesn't mean you never let anybody go,
Right.
but you're telling them what it's going to take to stay. Or when you let them go, you try to let them know why.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, that's still the hardest part of leadership for me is parting ways well. Very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine, because just the complexity of that, and especially if there's relationship and there's connection, and or there's been a major blow up, and how do we navigate all of that, and so that part of it I could absolutely see being really difficult. And so saying that too, that's actually kind of leads to the next question I was thinking of. But no, there's challenges in every leadership style, whether you're church, professional, whatever it might be, and there's obstacles and challenges that come up. And so that elders face specifically when they're in those roles. And so what are some tools maybe that they can use to help maintain relational health, continue to lead well, and even, and navigate those really difficult, touchy situations well?
So this has a couple different levels, right? So one level is you've got to think through your communication with people. And one of the advice I was given was know what the 3 bullet points are you need to communicate in this situation. So you're not just rambling and all over the place when you're talking to people in a difficult situation. Be very clear, be very concise. This is it. Use an envelope conversation approach. It's like, hey, you and I are connected in this job capacity. This is how what brings us together. Here's the problem. Be as clear as you can. 1, 2, 3. These are the things that need to be addressed. Hoping we can address these things where even if you're not working here in the future, you and I can still, be happy to see each other and have a relationship moving forward. Yeah. Now, I've not always done that well, to be honest. There were partly because things are not always completely up to you. Sometimes there are other people involved in the decision-making process, right? And things end up getting handled in a way you wouldn't have wanted them handled. And so there's always issues to this, but one of them is having a clear communication strategy. Start with relationship, go to the problem, end with relationship. And in that problem, make sure that you're very clear and focused. You know what your bullet points are. On the when it comes to your own resilience and their resilience, and it's like in my setting, who needs to know about this? Who doesn't need to know about this? Because I got to make sure that I'm processing this with the right people. There are people I should not be talking to about this, and there are people that I really need to get some input. So when I have big decisions, like one of the core values of Deeper Walk, we got 4 core values, and our last one is wisdom. And what that means is we want to seek God's wisdom in the major decisions we make, and we want to get the best human wisdom we can in the earthly decisions we make. And so I'm like, who in my life has the most experience with this? Who's been down this road before? Where can I get the best advice? And it gets confusing when you're getting conflicting advice, right, from those people. But it becomes very clarifying when you've got uniform advice coming from them too, of this is what you do. So, and then at the end of the day, I've got to find a way to let things go.
Yeah.
And my brother has a saying for this. My brother was he was an executive in the corporate world for decades, and you got to take this a little tongue in cheek and not too literally. But it's like he's say you got to care, but not too much. And his point was you got to care about what's going on, but at the end of the day, you've also got to be able to turn it off.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to go home and you got to be present with your family. You got to be able to be present with other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you don't care, but you got to be careful about caring so much that you can't let it go, and that this stuff is living rent free in your head all of the time. And so that's sort of been, and that's one of the reasons I like John Eldridge's pause app with the "I give everything and everyone to you, God." I think that's been a helpful exercise for me to just take the deep breath. Okay, and I find that sometimes when I can't sleep because my mind is just spinning with those things, it helps to just get up and write it down.
Yeah.
I also find that handwriting it out is better than typing it out,
For sure.
because it actually, is more concrete and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things I do, right? If you're looking at what do you do?
Yeah.
That's a few of them.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense of ownership that sometimes we allow to be, maybe the line of ownership to be too large. There are definitely things that are ours and things that we do need to own in whatever the situation is. And then there's things that really aren't ours. That's maybe up to the other person to own,
Yeah.
or the situation isn't really ours or theirs. It just is. And that's been really helpful for me, of like, what is actually mine here to hold, and what isn't, so that I can let all of that go. And anything I am holding, I'm not holding alone.
Yeah.
Whether that's asking other people to share that with me and God to share that with me, or so that we're not crushed under weight that wasn't ever ours to have hold in the first place.
Well, and that's just it. When you say that one of the jobs of an elder is carry the weight of the community, the reason that an elder can step into that role, right, is someone with earned maturity. The reason they can step into that role is that they're also practiced at how to let go of it, right? In other words, you can only step in to carry the weight of a community if you are really good at stepping in at the level you need to step in and stepping out at the level you don't need to be in.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yep.
All right, I have one last question for you. So, you weren't prompted on this, so
Here we go.
What is your dream for community? There's a lot of pieces that may not feel like they're in place, and I think many of us have a hunger for. There's a dream living inside, I think, of all of us, of what we long for it to look like, and I'm just curious what yours is.
Yeah. Now, I think for a long time, my internal personal dream, right, was a couple of things. One, I love the idea of having my kids have their own families and living nearby. I love that. That's been a dream. Loved the idea of having the grandkids just down the street kind of thing, and them having their own lives, but being able to connect easily. I've had a dream of kind of a retreat sort of space where people could come. I'll put it this way. I've spent my life going to where people are and talking. As I get older, I think the dream is having a place where they can come to me.
Yes.
And that there's a sort of a community that can be built around that. And then when it comes to churches, is the dream is of being in a church where I know the kids' names. I know the youth, the names of the kids in the youth group. I'm on speaking terms with the parents, and I have friends among the elders, right? That's the dream, right? So when I show up at church on Sunday and I see kids running around, don't want to go, oh, those darn kids running around the church. I want to look at them and go, oh, that's, I know her and I know him, and that's them. And then I want to know who their parents are, and I want to, have so I heard somewhere, a principle called 7-17-70. And I don't know if you've heard this, but it goes, the average extrovert in a church needs to feel like they are good friends with 7 people. They need to feel like they know the stories of 17 people, and that they can say hi by name to 70 people.
Wow.
And or they're not going to feel like they belong.
Wow.
And I think I've got enough extrovert to me that fits. When I walk into church, I want to feel like I've got at least 7 friends in this church. I want to feel like I know the stories of 17 people around here. and I can greet by name about 70 of them. And that makes me, so it doesn't matter how big the church is, I can feel like I belong if I have that.
Yeah.
And so in smaller churches, it's a little, it's like I just know everybody.
Right. Yeah.
But even in a big church, in a mega church, you can have that. And as long as you do, you can feel a sense of belonging.
Oh, that's really powerful.
That is really powerful. Yeah. It's that safe, healthy family of God that we need and that we all are longing for and want to be a part of. Well, awesome. Well, Dr. Warner, it's been fantastic having you here on the podcast. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this conversation. It's been really, really good, and I'm excited to continue this at some point.
Well, I've enjoyed every minute of it. You guys are great, and make it very easy to have a conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.